Nancy Guthrie. The Mexico discovery. Investigators cross the border, expecting to find Nancy Guthrie. They don't find her. They find something no one warned them about. A tip comes in from a Mexican missing persons group. The caller says, Nancy's remains sit in an unmarked grave near the border. The location has a name, Mariposa. Searchers move fast. They comb the area within hours. Nancy isn't there, but the ground doesn't stay empty. They uncover more than 20 unmarked graves. None of them belong to Nancy Guthrie. You're about to learn two things by the end of this video. First, why investigators believed Nancy could be near that border at all. Second, what those graves reveal about a threat much bigger than one missing woman. This discovery doesn't close the case. It cracks it open wider than anyone expected. Because whoever sent that tip either wanted searchers looking in the wrong place or knew something about this region investigators hadn't considered yet. Either way, the search for Nancy Guthrie just became something else entirely. 5 months, no arrest, no name, and now, a graveyard full of strangers standing where investigators thought they'd find answers. You need to understand how this connects. It starts the night Nancy disappeared. To understand why they were searching Mexico at all, you have to go back to the night Nancy vanished. January 31st. Nancy spends the evening with her daughter Annie and Annie's husband Tommaso. They drop her home at 9:48 p.m. The house goes quiet. At 1:47 in the morning, a masked man walks up to her door. He wears gloves, he wears a balaclava, a gun sits holstered against his leg. He disables her doorbell camera using nearby branches. This isn't random. He's done this before, or he planned every second of it. At 2:28 a.m., something changes. The app connected to Nancy's pacemaker loses its signal completely. Investigators believe this is the exact moment she leaves her home's range. She never returns. A friend calls the family the next morning when Nancy misses church. Relatives arrive before noon and call the sheriff's department immediately. Officers reach the home by 12:15 p.m. They know instantly something is deeply wrong. Here's your first answer. Investigators recover black gloves near the property days later. DNA inside them belongs to an unknown man. The FBI's database returns nothing, no name, no match. Then come the ransom notes. The first says Nancy is alive and demands $4 million in Bitcoin. The second, days later, says she's dead. It calls her buried with nature now. Investigators reach a hard conclusion. Both notes came from the actual abductor, not a copycat chasing headlines. This is why the border theory exists. Nancy's home sits just 60 miles from Mexico. The terrain nearby is brutal, wide open, and nearly impossible to monitor. A vast reservation stretches between Tucson and the border, giving anyone moving at night countless paths that avoid cameras completely. That's your first promise, delivered. Now you know why investigators looked south. But crossing that border didn't answer their question. It handed them a different one entirely. That theory sent investigators south. What they found didn't answer the question. It raised a bigger one. The person who sent those ransom notes hears about the Mexico search, and they respond with something investigators don't expect. They deny any connection to it. They call the anonymous tipster foolish for sending searchers to the wrong place. Think about what that means. Whoever writes these notes watches the case closely enough to react in real time. They want credit only for what they actually did. Now here's your second answer, the one that changes everything. A cybersecurity firm called Certic, one of the most respected names in crypto security, studies this case. They give it a label most people have never heard, a wrench attack. You need to understand what that phrase actually means. Standard hacking targets software systems remotely. A wrench attack targets a person directly. It uses physical force, or the threat of it. The goal is forcing someone to hand over access voluntarily. No hacking skill required, just leverage over a human being. By using that label, Certitake suggests something specific. Nancy may not have been targeted because of who her daughter is. She may have been targeted for something tied to her own finances. A Bitcoin wallet, an investment account, something requiring her cooperation to unlock. Once that access was given, or refused, the reason to keep her alive disappeared. Retired FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer calls this label a breakthrough. She explains that firms like Certic never attach their name to a theory without solid evidence. Sheriff Nanos won't confirm details publicly, but he confirms something important. He's flagged the report to his investigation team. That single word carries enormous weight. It means he's treating this theory as real, not speculation. So ask yourself something. Was Nancy targeted because of fame, or was she targeted for something only she controlled? If investigators are right about this motive, the person behind it isn't finished. Weeks later, a new message proves exactly that. While investigators wrestled with motive, someone else was about to speak up. Late June, a new letter reaches TMZ. Same email address used since February. Same Bitcoin wallet investigators have tracked for months. This time, the sender claims something new. 2 people were involved in this kidnapping, not one masked man acting alone. The letter goes further. It claims hidden footage exists, showing Nancy with one of her captors on her final day. Sheriff Nanos won't confirm the video. He won't confirm a second suspect. He compares this letter to past hoaxes people have already faced federal charges for. But investigators treat this differently than every other fake message they've received. The matching wallet and email aren't details a copycat could fake convincingly. Whoever sent this letter has communicated with TMZ since the earliest days of this case. This isn't a stranger inserting themselves into headlines. Let's recap what investigators actually know about this man. He stands between 5'9" and 5'10". Average build, nothing remarkable, nothing that stands out in a crowd. He carries an unidentified 25-liter hiking pack. He wears gloves that hold DNA with no database match anywhere. Behind the scenes, genetic genealogy work continues every single week. Investigators build family trees branch by branch, hoping his relatives surface somewhere in public records. Every piece of evidence now points in the same direction, but 5 months later, one thing still hasn't changed. Every new lead tightened the case, but 5 months later, one thing still hadn't changed. More than 100 days pass. No name, no arrest, no confirmation of where Nancy actually is. The reward keeps growing. Combined between the family and federal contributions, it now exceeds $1 million. Public figures start asking the same question millions of viewers already ask. Kim Kardashian raises it on her own podcast, wondering how someone vanishes an elderly woman and stays invisible this long. Sheriff Nanos insists his silence is strategy, not failure. He says releasing details publicly could tip off the person responsible. Think about that graveyard outside Nogales one more time. More than 20 unmarked graves, none of them Nancy's, still sitting unexplained in that desert. The search for Nancy Guthrie revealed something nobody expected to find. The masked man who studied her home in advance is still out there. The person who wrote those notes and resurfaced in June with new claims is still out there. Somewhere behind encrypted messages and deliberate silence, this case is still moving.